All right. 100K buys you the peace and the extra mental space to say no to opportunities. And I'm actually making this video because I fired two agency clients today, not one, exactly two, because of these reasons. And I could never have done it in the beginning. So, but now we've like made multi seven figures in the beginning. It's just like I started, we were just like slaving away for everyone. And we just like couldn't say no. And we're just like completely different mental space. We're just going to make this video because it's going to give you a lot of clarity on how the evolution works. And then you're going to can do this for yourself as well. And it's going to unlock a lot of different perspective and also like a different game for you. So if you look at that, $100K isn't for buying anything or like any toys or any watches or any other bullshit. Like you see the gurus out there. It's actually for boundaries because you're just going to see yourself differently once you hit that point because you don't see the life through the lens of desperation instead of going to see your life through the lens of opportunity. And this is like two completely different shoes. And you might think, okay, yeah, this doesn't apply to me, and I also like can see the world already through that opportunity right now with having less than 100K to my name, but it isn't the case because one thing is true, like there's always the survivorship bias, and our brains are wired for survival. So being broke always makes you act like a hunted animal day to day. So you're always just going to think, okay, I make paychecks for people, or basically how do I pay my rent and how do I survive next month, and then you can't really see the world clearly and you can't really make any good decisions because it's like in this constant threat of how do I survive, and you're also not going to develop any proper self-respect at that point because it's just going to jump after every single opportunity. If a client treats you like shit, you're just going to accept all the excuses. We've always like done this in the beginning. It's like ghosting you for 2 weeks and you don't care about it. But if you do that, you basically just like you walk yourself in a hole more and more because at that time you basically already you see like the message of this client and stuff, and you just like already resent your job or your work for that, and it's like grinds you in a deeper and deeper hole because the more you then deal with that, the more you get in a dark mental space, and just like this is not healthy, and just like leads you down the road of making even worse decisions, which then is just like this accelerating flywheel of you basically just like making things worse and worse because it's most likely that if you're like in this mental space, you're going to make the situation worse and not better. And that's what the fate of a lot of business owners. So they just like start getting into business with less than 100K. And it's like, okay, they're in this mode of constant desperation that's always thinking about the survivorship bias and making all the mistakes because they only can think short term and not long term and just thinking about how to survive. Yeah, and then they fail and they have to go back to a job because it's just ultimately it's enough. And then they just like have made their life worse because they just like stress themselves out. They got a terrible mental place. They would and fucked up all their relationships in the process, and it all hasn't been worth it for them in the process because they just like haven't set themselves up for success. And at this point, I would basically say, okay, the core lesson was like, I would recommend to get to like 100K before you even start a business. So I was like, okay, but isn't business the way to make money? Yes and no, because if you don't have that mental space to make the right decisions and to actually think long term, most of the time you're just going to make your situation worse. So what I mean by that is you can just like, there's so much opportunity out there. You can just like join a bunch of startups. You can do whatever. You can get some cool websites there. You can just like save up money and then just like get to 100K. And then you also like don't buy anything, just like have it aside as like your war chest. And then you can go and become a founder. And that's why I also like wouldn't recommend at this point from starting a business with less money than that. Because if you do that, and to be totally honest, I also have done that, then you will get to the 100K, but you will just like, it will be a lot of chaos. And at the same time, you won't do a good job in the process. So what do I mean with that? You will do more harm than good because if you don't care about how you make the money at this point, just like try to get to the point because you don't want to feel desperate anymore, just like want to get peace for yourself, they don't care. And it will not lead to like shitty services, it lead to being dishonest, it will lead to be like, it's like a negative flywheel. So we're just like only going to think about how to get money for yourself, which then basically will lead to providing even less service to customers, which will make it even harder to get to the next point. So like this negative flywheel just like accelerates more and more. The core message here is get your own life in order first, because then you have like mental peace. You can make the right decisions. You can have the right self-respect. If a client goes all over you, so I have fired like 2 clients today, is because of that. It's like because it's just like not worth it. It only makes sense if you like see the general opportunity and it like makes sense from both parties. And you can only do that if you're like not dependent on anyone. And that's like the key word here. If you depend on anything in life, you're like in a terrible place. So people always say, okay, yeah, I'm addicted to like alcohol or I'm addicted to drugs, and that's like the worst thing. But it applies to anything. If like dependent on a thing in life, and you just like have to get it, and you have this constant need, it's toxic, and it will just like destroy you from the inside. And it's like the same for money. So you can't have that this like dependent feeling of like I'm dependent on this client. If this client leaves, then um, everything's going to shit for me. If you have that, then you're going to do everything wrong. It's going to get worse and worse. So obviously, everybody needs money to survive, and it's like it's the security net, and that's why you have to get there first, so that you can basically switch this off consciously, and then basically focus on something, building something for the long run, because it takes time. It takes like 1 year, 2 years, just like to get the basic fundamentals there, and then basically enables you to build it from the long run. And it's also like you need to spend money to make money, and that's also like what a lot of people don't understand. So at this point, I would say from like also like being that fine, going to business with like there's an RDK to your name is like almost like a suicide mission, because like only like 0.1% make it out, because it's like such a terrible place to start. So if you would just like if you do that, you have like no clue and you have less than 100 grand, you're like basically broke and say I'm starting a business. It's like you're basically setting yourself up for complete failure, because you just like have to say yes to everything, and you're going to say yes to almost most things that then in the end are going to destroy you more and more. They're going to make you hate your life more and more. And because you can't have basic boundaries, the only thing basically you're going to do is that they're going to chase after the next quick buck, and then go from here to here, go from business model to business model, go from shitty client to shitty client. And it's just like locking your lanes. Like, that's going to take a year. That's the strategy. That's where we're going to roll. And then like allowing compound to actually kick in and carry you to the point where you actually want to be. And therefore you have to like need this piece, you need this mental space. And I just like have set 100K here as a number, because it's like it makes sense. It's like around that metric. Obviously, the more the better, but that's like the point where you can start feeling that way. Obviously, it's better if you have 200K, 300K, but that's where you can actually start um, approaching life and business from a genuine perspective. And it made all the difference for me in the beginning. I bitched away way too much for different people, different team members, different clients, whatever. Like so afraid of just like saying something wrong, because you're always like afraid of losing, instead of basically seeing the opportunity of gaining. And you basically even can't play life on the offensive, because and then like your entire life is on the line. If you don't make it, you can't pay rent next month, and you basically just like the thing you go the shit in this place just like prevents you from making the bets where you need to make the bets. Because in business, the huge gains always come from taking risks, but not from like taking any risk that like risk anything personal for you. It's like calculated risks, but the right risks. And you only can take this risk. Okay, I'm going to go into the downwards project. It might take 2 months, 3 months. It might amount to nothing. We go into this client. We pay more upfront. We do some setup here because we see the potential now. You can't do this stuff if you're basically like starving. You basically need to get the guy who pays like $1,000 upfront to just like pay rent or whatever. And this is like a terrible place to be. So this is like what everyone gets wrong about business, because like think, okay, there's like all this advice, you need $0 to start a business. But I would say at this point, you need 100K to start a business. Not for anything, any cost related for the business, just like for the mental space you buy with it, because it's just like you like have it, and you can generally prepare the game, because otherwise it's just like playing the game on like 10-15% mental bandwidth. You could otherwise play it 100%, because it's just like constantly worried, constantly thinking about this. And I've been in this place, it's been a shitty place. I had to grind through all the stuff back then to just like get to 100K and way beyond, to basically just like then think that way. But if I would do it again, I would do it differently. As I said, I would get the money first in like a position where I just like trade my skills against the money, and then basically go in there later, because then I wouldn't do like crazy stuff to basically get there, and just like, yeah, we could just like get there more genuine, so to say. Yeah, that's my video for today. Do with that whatever you wish. And I hope for everyone that you get to 100K as soon as possible, to like get this mental peace and get out of this pain cave in the end. Because it's just like, I have the feeling that like 2 layers to business. Like there's like this big muddy space in the bottom where just like everyone is in the space and all desperate, and like there's 90% of businesses. And there's like everyone else about that, which is like just general business, general deals, general longer term thinking. But yeah, like 90% aren't that, because they never get to 100K. Most business owners are broke. Yeah. I hope this isn't you. I hope you can do something with it. See you next one.